Today I have John Galloway and Bruno Capuano. They are both principal program managers at Microsoft on the Agentic Dev Tools and Framework team. Gentlemen, hi.
Hello.
How are you both? The agenda today, such as it is to talk a little bit about Microsoft Agent Framework and how it relates to Foundry. And given all that Foundry would do, why would you use Microsoft Agent Framework once you're doing Foundry? So how do those things fit together? Because I've been doing a lot of work in MAF, but not in Foundry. So I'm hoping you will elucidate.
Well, I'm mostly here to learn from Bruno.
Okay.
I could start with, I'll say some wrong things and then you correct me. How's that, Bruno? So my understanding kind of is that Foundry, like there's a lot of overlap in different things, but Foundry's primary thing like evolved from like Azure AI and stuff like that. And that's basically cloud hosting for large language models and, like AI things, AI services. So the same way you'd connect, say, to, OpenAI with a key, you could connect to Foundry. One nice thing is that it integrates well with all the Azure things. So if you've got, ID and you've got permissions and all those billing and those sort of things set up, if you're already on Azure, this is kind of a nice thing. And it hosts a lot of different models. So you've got, your OpenAI and Anthropic, and you've also got like Microsoft models. There's some cool models coming out from Microsoft lately, like MAI. And then there's also like open weight models. So that's conceptually how I think about it. Now there's overlap. It does more than that, but that's part of what I think of it as doing. And then Agent Framework is more about orchestrating together. So like we start with like a chat client, which is just request response, but that's not super efficient because you're constantly having to tack on to each request the whole context of what you were talking about. Hey, you're a helpful assistant, you review blog posts, here's the summary of what we've already been talking about, because every single request to a large language model is it's a stateless, right? So over time, then it's like, well, we need to wrap that up with some context. And then we also need to give some tools. Maybe you're allowed to search the internet, or you're allowed to use this, you have access to this library tool or something. And so agents allow you to kind of package that all together. So you have this large language model, like capability, and you also have like the memory. And then you also have tools. And so those are agents. And then once you have agents, like you don't want to write all that code yourself. And you also need intelligence about how these agents work together. You need orchestration and stuff. And so that's where you get into Agent Framework, which evolved from a few things at Microsoft. There was AutoGen, there's semantic kernel, there were other things going on, and we've kind of, pulled everyone all together and said, we're building Agent Framework. And so that's what Agent Framework was. Agent Framework does a lot of stuff, but okay.
Right. Okay. I don't want to interrupt you. I've got well over 30 blog posts up on my blog about Microsoft Agent Framework. So, and everything you said fits in really well with that.
Okay, good.
So those will go together nicely. But what I'm a little confused about is you can write, if I understand it, you can write a lot of that, if not all of that, in Foundry. But
yes, the key
without
part
Microsoft Agent
is
Framework.
that what we are closing the gap this year is that Agent Framework is amazing. I love Agent Framework because I am a C# programmer. So if I want to create an agent, 90% of the time I am going to open a CS class and I'm going to try to write them there. And Agent Framework is the way to do it. However, the challenge that we had in the past is, okay, now I have an agent and the agent is running. How do I deploy my agent? If I want an agent, not a website, not a console, I want an agent to deploy an agent. So one of the cool things that we have right now in Foundry is that the concept in Foundry of an agent, it's literally the same that we have in Agent Framework. As John said, you have the memory, you have the tools, you have the LLM, the instructions, and more. Now we can pick up an agent, literally the agent that we code in C# in Agent Framework, and deploy it to Foundry as something that is called hosted agent. And the cool part about this, and this is going to be just a container running in Foundry, but we basically, because we deploy a hosted agent in Foundry, everything else that Foundry give us for agent is already there. Like an example, guardrails. Foundry have an amazing set of tools to secure your agent. Evals, if we want to have metrics, this is all fully integrated with Azure Monitor or whatever is the latest name, because I used to say APP Insights, and now it's not more application insight, is something else. So if we change the name, sorry, for me it's APP Insights or Monitor, but we also have all of the traces there. So I think that is something very cool, that we can program an agent using agent framework and then pack our agent and deploy it to Foundry. And because Foundry knows how to use those agents, it will automatically be connected to everything that we have there in Azure. Okay. So that's kind of one of the views that I have.
That's extremely cool. That is extremely cool. And if you're up for it, what I'd love to do is bring up, unless you have a sample, bring up a program I wrote in Microsoft Agent Framework, but it's running locally, so we could clone it, and then we could talk about, okay, how do I get this up in the cloud using Foundry? And how do I add the kinds of features you're talking about? Yes, because I've got telemetry, so I'd like that to integrate, right? And I've got the orchestrator, and which is an agent, and I've got a bunch of other agents that it interacts with, and I've got Tavali for web search. I mean, I've got a bunch of stuff in there, and hopefully that will integrate nicely with Foundry. But is that a 1 hour job, or is that a 3-day job, or is that a week?
I mean, I hate to give back the consultant answer, but it's going to depend on how deep your agent is. If your agent is just an agent that talks with an LLM, in example, that is literally a couple of lines of C# that is going to expose your agent as a hosted agent. And then we need to figure out I can't remember the ACD deploy. There's a couple of ACD deploy commands that we need to use that is going to pack the agent, the C# project as a container and deploy it. So that's one option. However, if your agent, and this is the most common case, has specific connections to third-party tools, do something with your system and more, that's the moment that you need to stop and think, okay, if I need to move my agent locally for the cloud, how do I do that? What else do I need to have there? Because I am connecting here to a third-party system, so I may need to have some environment variables with keys, tokens, and more. So you're going to start from scratch for a very, very simple agent scenario to be deployed as a hosted agent. But again, depending on what is your agent doing, it may be a little trickier.
Okay, and right now I'm using a config file that has my keys in it. So it's got my Open API key, and it's got a key for Tavali.
Can I give a public service announcement?
Please.
In .NET, we really recommend don't put your keys ever in a config file. So you want to use user secrets for that. I've made it a mission of mine to always call that out, because .NET has really good support for user secrets, and it's kind of heartbreaking to look at sample code and stuff that you'll see online. And there's entire websites and things where people just share out all these keys because people will commit them to source control, and it'll include their config file and all that.
It is in my get ignore, but that's fine. What you said is fine. So one thing that I need to do right away is switch over to secrets. But if but if I'm in secrets and I now am going up to Foundry, is that going to just automatically work? Is Foundry going to know what to do with it?
When you go to Foundry, the way to do that is to use a key vault. Key vault is the service that we store there. That's the moment that we need to basically start to add this if environment, that if I am working locally, okay, read from user secrets or read from the key vault, or try to do user secrets first, then the key vault, if you are in Foundry, is going to default to the second one. But in Foundry,
I think .NET config can fall through on that.
Yes.
So it'll say
if there's user will automatically do that for sure.
Yeah. Cool.
What was that last? What will fall through what?
Well, the idea with so the .NET configuration system is built so that it prioritizes, like if it finds user secrets, it uses that. If you have key vault configured, it uses that, and it kind of checks them off. So you don't have to have a lot of if debug or if local, or, you don't have to write that logic. You basically always put your stuff in a config provider, and then it'll just find that. So like in this case, Key Vault is the the best. You can also, like when I'm deploying stuff to, like, I don't know, app services or something like that, it'll also just find out a configuration, yes. Right? Yeah.
Okay. And then if I want to add RBAC or some kind of authorization, which I don't have at the moment, is that something I would do typically locally, or and then move it, or would I wait until I'm deploying it to Foundry?
Hey, that's a good question, because the agents now, they have what you can do a couple of things with an agent, but the agent per se in Foundry may have their own Entra ID, object ID. So they can be an isolated object, like a virtual user in Entra, in Azure Entra. So that's amazing in the sense that you can add a specific permission to an agent there to do A, B, and C. That's it. That's only work great when you are fully working in Foundry. If you try to do that locally, that's, I will say, an interesting experience, because you spend, and I may or not may get there, a full morning trying to make things work, and it's not going to get anywhere. So you say, okay, I will forget about this, I will move forward, and I will apply all of this at the end, because I know the key part to do that. So how to, again, and I hate to do this answer, but this all depends on your scenario. May I share my screen? Because if you know Agent Framework,
Please.
I want to show you the 2 lines that make an agent a hosted agent. So you can take a look that, yes, A, B, C, and D, and the last one is a new one. Oh, I like that one. This is the magic that you have there. So,
please do.
Yes.
And,
so
in the world of great timing, as soon as we got into this, the guys who mowed the lawn showed up. So I'm going to go mute.
To be honest with you, your noise cancellation microphone seems to work very well. I didn't hear anything. It was
excellent. That's good to know.
It was great.
Considering what I spent on this damn microphone.
Okay, so a little Visual Studio Code here. I have a simple agent. I literally named this an agent sample that we have. And this is a couple of lines that we have there. Before going here, if someone wants to start with hosted agents, I will advise everybody to go and install the Foundry Toolkit in Visual Studio Code, because the Foundry Toolkits give you access to a lot of tools that we have in Foundry, including agents, where we can see the prompt agent. These are standard agents that we have. This is the agent where you go in Foundry and manually define your prompt, your instructions, your tools, and more. Your hosted agents, the one that you write using code, and then you have routines, which are basically cron jobs that you can define in Foundry, and more. But when you create a new hosted agent, there are a couple of samples here in Python, C#. The samples also support different type of frameworks. So if you are working with Agent Framework, which most of the C# developers are doing, it's supported here. But because this is in a standard specification, you can bring your own agent here and host it in Foundry. And when you create an agent, and I literally did this 2 seconds ago, this is what you are going to have. So you're going to have a C. Let me go here. So you're going to have a project here, a C# console application that is going to have a program file, a Docker container, a couple of variables. This is a standard deploy in a container to Foundry. And the code is very, very simple. You only need your Foundry project endpoint and the model that you are going to use. Again, this is just a hello world agent, but I think it's good to understand what we have here. So when we start to see the code, you have the endpoint, the deployment, and this is the magic happening. First, we start with a standard agent. This is created a project, created an agent with a model. I think I am using a GPT-5 mini or one of the OpenAI models. Can remember a set of instructions, a math expert, yada, 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 the name of the agent and the description. When I have my agent, and this is an AI agent, so this is if you probably have something like this in your own code as a Microsoft Agent Framework agent. So this is an AI agent. The important part is that when we have this, and this is the magic happening here, what we are going to do is we are going to add and support for responses is one of the way that the chat models gives responses. There are the standard OpenAI and the responses. We support responses, register the protocol, and then map Foundry responses. With this, they are going to have the necessary endpoints. So when I deploy this, it's going to be seen as an agent in Foundry. Let me deploy this. Yes, please.
Before you do, you had a Microsoft Agent Framework application, local.
Yes.
And then you added lines 45 and 46 to make it work with Foundry. Did I get that right?
Yes, this is the magic. Yes, this is the magic to make the Foundry hosted agents, to basically register the responses, one, and then register the protocol. This is going, because this is a console application, this is a web app, this is going to expose the endpoints that when it's deployed to Foundry, it will automatically do the magic to Foundry. Oh, this is an agent. I know this agent. Let's use it into my catalog.
Very cool.
Okay, so going back here, when I created this is a small hello world do math operation projects, it gives you also this README with all of the explanations, how you can use the hosting package. This is probably the way that we need to go with your project to figure out, okay, this is how I have my stuff, this is how I add these projects and more. So there is a hosting package here, and the explanation how is going to be everything. The cool part about this...
I'm sorry, what generated it? What caused this to be generated by doing what?
When I went here to create a hosted agent and I finished my template, this is the tutorial, sorry, the wizard, and I have here where I want to create this, what is the name of the agent, and the model. Once you finish, you have all of these that include your C# project here, your agents MD, the deployment, and also you have your README with all of this instructions that you have there. So,
but I'm sorry, I keep interrupting you, but you have a program CS here. But if I'm bringing up my MAF program, it already has a program CS.
Yes.
Right. So do they get merged or this gets added to the existing?
No, this is a tutorial. This is just a sample that you can create from scratch. So I like this because this is 50 lines of code to explain the basics, but this is just a tutorial. If you want to do it in your own code, we need to go and take a look at the official documentation for the agent framework hosted agents and see, as I said, this is the 2 lines of code that we need to use. And somewhere here, we have the Microsoft Agent AI Foundry hosting, which are the agent framework for hosted agents in Foundry, which I know I can't even say it in Spanish, so it's a mess. But these are I can't remember, it's a 2 or 3 library that we need to add to make it happen. But these are it's not going to add anything into your project. This is a complete sample project, so we can have this to run it. And the cool parts about this, once you have this running, is that I can go here to agents. I can take a look at my agent somewhere here. Let me go to Foundry. Take a look at agent, and I can run my agent. I can go here, press F5. I don't know if this is going to work because I have a lot of beta / I'm testing a lot of stuff here, but I can run this agent here in a window where I have my prompts, my evals, my output, my logs, and more. And the cool part is when I deploy this to Foundry, I can also debug the same agent in Foundry. So this is the agent inspector. This is also part. Yes, I know debug type. I'm probably missing something. As I said, I didn't even have C# in this installation. So let's start C#. This is me with a lot of testing programs and more. But the cool part is that when I have my agents running locally, I can deploy the agent. I can run the agent. I can test it locally. And once I have testing locally here, then I switch to the cloud, and it's the same. And as you can see here, my agent should run here in a local host port. Yes.
Back up for 1 second. How do I get this into Visual Studio Code? Because what I'm doing today is dropping out to the terminal and saying .NET run, but this looks more integrated.
Oh, yes. This is how you like to run your projects. I am also a terminal person. I usually go here, like the terminal, like you say. Let me open a new one. Let's see where I am. There it is. Let me see. I need to go to SRC. And then here, Can't remember the name, agent framework, there it is, clear, and I do .NET Run. Yes, I'm also this type of person, but I'm starting to become a lazy programmer that just pays, and yes, I need to set up a variable environment, a couple of things here to make it work, but the other way is to get here, press S5, like literally it's like going to debugging and press S5 from here, and it's going to run everything. The cool part, and again, I know that the process is already running. The cool part about this is that when you run directly from the launcher, it's going to also launch the debugging session and more. So the terminal is fine, but if you run the S5 directly from the run and debug from Visual Studio Code, the extension is also attached. The debugger is going to attach the agent inspector, and it's going to do a couple of other things.
I'm sorry, hold on. I just want to keep making sure that I understand, because sometimes on videocasts, everything goes by really fast and it's like, what? What you just said is if I'm in Visual Studio Code and I hit F5, not only will it run and open the debugger, but it will create for me the thing you just showed, the agent inspector?
Yes. It's going to open the agent inspector.
Just by hitting F5?
Yes, because somewhere here, it's the launch, let me see here, in the launch JSON file, and this is Visual Studio Code stuff. This is here. It's going to basically attach the executor, and it's going to also open I can't remember how it's doing, but it's going to open the agent monitor. I think is the same, the name or something like this. Let me run it one more time.
That's a wonderful thing. Just as an aside, it's not why I wanted to run this videocast, but this is a great thing to just pick up as we go.
Yes, and as I said, once you have your agent running, you don't need to do this if you press S5. If you are used to do the .NET Run from the console and your agent is on localhost port 8088, 8090 or whatever, you just type, when your agent is running here, you just type your port here, connect, and if the agent is working, it's going to be connected there, and you can start to debug and more. So you can test, even if your agent is not yet supported hosted agents, you can use this to test your agents, because this is also something very cool. If your agent is working, you can start to have traces here, or locally start to connect the traces, analyze the traces, and do a lot of other stuff. So the Foundry, the Microsoft, the Foundry Toolkit extension brings, if you are developing agents with Agent Framework, the Foundry Toolkit extension is also a super cool tool to do these kind of things. Set up your agents, test your agents, your about. Instead of creating the typical console application, you can literally run your agent and then get here and start to test your agent using the agent inspector. And there are other tools here. This is a full set of tools to do with agents locally. And the nice part for me is that once you have everything work locally, you deploy your agent, and you can do the same with your deploy agent on the cloud. So you can basically, it's working locally and it's working there. It should be the same.
I'm for it. Sounds great. So go ahead.
Yes. No. I was going to say that let me deploy this one.
Okay.
So we can have it running on the cloud. And again, I may miss something. I have Docker running. Yes. So there are a couple of, oh my God, the color schema is very bad with the light here. So there are two ways to deploy this, using a container or using the code. Or you can recload. When you use a container, you can use the container registry locally. Let's package this as a zip, and then with the dependencies, and let's put the name of the agent. So let's do agent Jesse 01. So we have the agent there. Let's do next. And then, because I am deploying this to a container on Azure, I need to choose my hardware, my compute capability. So small CPU, 1 GB of RAM, go to the big CPU and more. And you can even have access if you are in some pre-release programs, so GPUs and more. So I'm going to do this. And this is how we package the container, and we package the local project to have it like this, and to have it all of the package, and then we do deploy, and this will take a couple of seconds or maybe a couple of minutes, depending on the day, but it's going to deploy the hosted agents to Foundry. Because this takes a couple of minutes, let me go to Foundry. This is Foundry. This is the project that we are working. And what we just been talking is like this. So I have a list of agents here. Let me zoom this a little more. So I have hosted agents, have a couple of hosted agents, and I have a couple of prompt agents. And this is all literally, oh, you have the agent is here. We are going to go there soon. It was faster than expected. If we go for one of the prompt agents, this is the ABC of an agent as we just talked. So we have a model, GPT-5 Sol. We have an instructions. Sorry, this was for a Spanish demo. So Spanish instructions, tools. We have the web tools here. We can enable memory to the agents and more. Once we have the agent up and running, we have
just say briefly the difference between a hosted agent and a prompt agent. I'm not familiar with prompt agents.
I'm sorry, what?
It says you have two types, hosted and prompt.
Yes.
And what is a prompt agent?
Prompt agent is the standard. Let me pick one. This one is the standard agents that you can create where you type here, literally in the wizard, you select your model. So I select my GPT-5, my Kimi, my.
So you're building this in Foundry.
Yes.
Gotcha.
You type your instructions. You connect your tools. Foundry has a catalog of tools. You can have a lot of toolbox and more, but you do everything manually here in Foundry. You don't code anything. Gotcha. What you can do later is you can call the agent. So we can go here and with a couple of lines of code, call these existing agents. So this is a prompt agent because we start with the prompt, basically.
Gotcha. To make sure I'm getting this right, a prompt agent is more like I would use an iChat client with, right? It's request response. And then the hosted agent is the full, has the memory and the life cycle and all that sort of stuff.
No, hosted agent, they have instructions, but they also have tools. So you can connect here new tools. You also have memory here. I can enable memory. So I can say, okay, create a new memory store for this agent. I can connect this to knowledge. So I can go here and connect my agent. This is a prompt agent, but I can connect with Work IQ or with Fabric IQ. So you can do a lot of stuff with hosted agents, with prompt agents, sorry. But you don't have any capability of code your agent. If you want to add some specific logic in your agents or more, you need to switch to the code agent. But
once so prompt agents are essentially low code.
Yes, kind of low code. Okay. And the cool part is that Foundry gives you a lot of stuff like in example traces. So out of the box, you have here, let me see if we have something, probably not in the last month, I can't remember. Well, you have traces where you can start to see who used the agent. And every time that you use the agent, you see the tool call. So you have traces.
Nice.
Also, you have the chance, as I mentioned before, to connect this to Azure Monitor. Okay, so this is the formal name, Azure Monitor. I am not talking about the APP insights. You have evaluations and you have optimization, which is something new that based on the history of your agents, Foundry can say, you know what, most of the time your agent is answering these type of questions and it's also working in this path of reasoning. You may want to add this rule to your agent instructions so your agent perform better. So your token consumption is better because we are all concerned about, we don't want to use tokens like crazy numbers and more. So we have that. But remember, we have our definition of the agent, which is all typed right now. It's the instruction, the model, the tools and more, traces, monitor, evaluations and more. If we go to a hosted agent,
yes,
what we are going to see, let's open our agent. So we can't define anything here in terms of tools. We have an agent that is hosted and came from a couple of prompts that we defined it and came in a package set of source code is there. However, we also have traces. So this is Foundry treating this like an agent where we are going to have the traces. The monitor is going to be here. The evaluation is going to be here. So there is kind of a big chunks of functionality for agents from Foundry that even if the agent is something that we code, we literally code ourselves, is going to work here as an agent. We don't care if it's a prompt agent or a hosted agent. What I like about this is that if I need to make changes to my agent, I will go here. I will came here to my playground, agent inspector program. Let me close everything. I will came here and I am going to start to make changes to my agent. So right now my agent literally said that this is a math expert and yada, yada, yada. So this is a sample. Let's test the agent to see if it's working. So can you, I don't know, can you solve 2 plus 2? I will assume that if everything is working fine and we deploy the agent and I need to figure out if I am using, I have one, yes, adding 2 plus 2 gives 4. This is probably the silliest agent ever. And because we are using GPT-5 mini.
That's going to put us all out of work right there.
But right now we have here an example traces. So at some moments we are going to start to see this is the call to my agent, doesn't do anything important or more, but because this agent is working hosted in a container, we can see a couple of interesting things here. So in example, the first, when I invoke the agent for the chat client, it went to Azure, get my credential because this is running in a container apps. This is more like in the Azure part of things. Said, okay, this is Bruno. So I have a token. So I am going to identify myself as Bruno and start to work as Bruno here. And then when I have the token, I am going to invoke the agent that is using GPT-5 mini here. And then it's going to also validate the credential. So all of the plumbing about everything that's happening in Foundry when you deploy an agent, it's all solved here because this is hosted agent and it works like this. And we have here nice traces about with the timing and more. Nice. What is cool here also is that if I went here and make a change to the agent, I don't know, in instructions, let's do something like if the operation is simple, let's also add some samples using emojis. Yeah, let's do an example for 2 plus 2. You can answer 4. You can answer 4, 2. Let me go here and add an apple. So I will say 2 apples plus 2 apples is equal 4 apples.
Great.
Again, don't use me to do your samples, but this is maybe an example. So I am going to basically improve my agent right now, saying that, hey, if you are answering for very simple people like Bruno, also use emojis and explain this in a simple way. And I'm going to deploy again my agent. How do I do this? Control-Shift-P. And I have here in the first one, Foundry Toolkit, deploy hosted agent. So I'm going to go to the wizard again. In this case, we are going to go to a new agent or existing agents. So to an existing one, next, the same everything. And it's going to take some time to do the deployment. Another cool feature of Foundry is that when you deploy an agent and you deploy a new version of the same agent and a new version, what we are going to see here in the collection of agents is that
version 2.
Yes, we have version 2 and we can switch between versions. And I can remember, and I don't know if I have it here live or not, you can also define, hey, test this agent. You can do some kind of A/B testing, saying, like example, like the formal release, the stable release is version 2, but from time to time run version 3 so I can get some insights, sample traces, and more. So there are ways also to do that. So I can go here to agent, so your agent, I can switch from version 1. Oh, I still don't see version 2. So let's refresh this. There it is. Version 2 here. So we see the 2 versions. And if I go here and I will say, let's make it difficult. Solve 3 times 5. Please, let's use tokens.
You're pushing it, okay.
And if we are lucky, we are probably going to have a lot of emojis with apples, oranges, or something like that. I don't know. But, oh, yes, we have a lot of emojis here.
There you go.
But this is something also, what I really like about this is that, hey, as a developer, my happy place is this one. This is what I like. This is what I understand. This is where I can start to define my rules, my logics, and more. And if I learn how to package this, how to add the responses, add this, and again, I can't remember, there is something in the documentation, how to run these 2 lines to deploy this as a hosted agent, I will go later to Foundry and I will have all of the features that I have in Foundry, like an example, traces. Now we should have 2 calls of the agent, not yet. Okay, still tracing, or maybe they are tied to the version. I can't remember. Maybe they are tied to the version. So I have all of my traces here. Then I have here my monitor, and I can open this in Azure Monitor. Somewhere here is going to be my agent with the traces and the calls between systems and more. All of that out of the box. So this is the moment that I need to go back 40 minutes to the original question is, what is the connection between the two of us? Is that, hey, I like to code my agents in Agent Framework. That's amazing. But if I need to deploy my agents to the cloud and I choose Foundry, Agent Framework and Foundry right now are a they're working very well together. If we did this podcast on January, I will probably have a different opinion and a different path to share. But right now it's not easy, but it really makes sense. Okay, I will code in Agent Framework, I deploy to Foundry, and they are going to work there fine.
So
all of
so
that is fantastic.
The steps for Jesse to add this into his is basically that like 3 lines of code, a few NuGet packages, and then using this extension, go through and deploy through there, and it would walk through the kind of provisioning stuff.
Yes, and the deploy is also, it's a couple of ACD commands. I can't remember. There is an ACD, deploy, agent, whatever. You point to your C# project, and it's going to package and then deploy. Somewhere in the documentation is there. The extension in Visual Studio Code make it easier. But if you are running this in a formal scenario where you are deploying this every, I don't know, when you automatically have a CI/CD process to deploy, there are also a lot of commands to do that. I can't remember. It's somewhere there in the documentation. We need to go there.
You can probably have Copilot write that for you once you have it deployed, right? It could
Yes, one is working. I would probably say, Copilot, okay, let's automate this. Let's create a CI/CD process, a GitHub action or whatever to deploy this. But yes, it's that process.
The only thing you said, I just want to follow, is that you said that you may need some NuGet packages. And is it obvious what you need there?
I don't know. Let's take a look at the CS.
Or does the extension bring that in for you?
The extension is going to do the magic for you and bring it, but it's going to. I am not a fan of this. This is because our friends are all Python developer first, so they like to do add .NET EMP, and this is also a good moment to go back to them for me and say, hey man, you know what? In .NET we don't use .env files. We use user secrets. We have other stuff, but let's forget about this one. So this is not one to do, but the other are the 2 that you need. Basically, Azure AI Project, and then Agent AI Foundry Hosting, which is the agent framework one that is going to bring everything to do hosted agents. So this is probably the only one that you need to add if you are already using Azure. That's the one that you need to do. And right now we are in version 1.15 preview, whatever big number is there.
Okay. So the first thing I want to do is go get the Foundry extension for Visual Studio Code.
Yes. And the Foundry extension for Visual Studio Code is, is Foundry Toolkit.
Foundry Toolkit, okay.
For Visual Studio Code.
Okay, great.
And you just mentioned something that is, sorry to interrupt, but I want, because we are recording this, I want to have this later for me to record.
Yes,
there is a very good scenario that you just mentioned, which is, hey, I like to create a hosted agent from scratch. But how about if I already have an agent? You probably already have an agent, and a lot of people already have created an agent. Maybe a wizard, maybe an analyzer, maybe a modernized whatever that can pick up my existing agent and let me know, hey, you can deploy this as a hosted agent, and you need to be aware of A, B, C, and D, that when you deploy this in Foundry, you need to, well, we talked at the beginning, you need to talk about authentication, you are using a third-party tool that you need to figure out how to connect in Foundry. So I think there is something there that I will probably give that feedback to the Foundry team in order to say, hey, for the toolkit, you may want to add an analyzer or an upgrader, or I don't know. They will figure out the name to, like you mentioned, analyze your current code, find your agent, and see what's happened before deploying, okay, in order to your solution to be ready to be deployed as a Foundry agent, as a hosted agent, sorry, this is a couple of things that you need to do before. That I think is a good idea.
Great. Let me go back over what you just said and expand just a little bit. I've got an app that I would like to do that, to create a hosted set of agents. It's got 4 or 5 agents in it. And I'd like to take advantage of Foundry and some of the features that you showed, and then also add some of the authentication, some other features. In the case where these already exist, it's not going to be quite as simple as using the Foundry toolkit and having it automatic wired up, right? I'm going to have to do, especially because I use a tool for a third party, I'm going to have to do a little bit of work. And you're saying that that's in the documentation that I'm going to find in that Foundry toolkit generated, or where am I going to find that?
I don't know. I was thinking out loud of a feature that I think is going to be useful for the toolkit, but I will probably say, okay, let's go back a little and think, hey, if you want to move this solution to Foundry or to the cloud, not even to Foundry, to Azure, and you're using this third-party tool, how a container app, how a solution running in Azure is going to connect to your tool. So when we have that, we need to figure out the step back, because at the end, this is a container apps running there. Okay, so I need to store my credentials in the keyboard, and then my agent talk to the keyboard and get the credentials and use the credentials and more. So those things, I think an analyzer will help to do before creating the hosted agent. But yes, if you are using a third-party tool, I don't want to say that we are not going to have a happy path, but I will say, okay, this is not going to be so happy. There is probably a couple of things here and there, but this is standard cloud development. This is when you move stuff, you need to learn how to connect the dots there.
Okay. Two things also is there's the Microsoft Learn MCP, and it can look stuff up in the Microsoft Learn docs, and it does a really good job with that. So I would make sure you've got that MCP set up, and then you can say, you can tell Copilot, look at the docs and figure out what I need to do to deploy this. And it
let me slow you down. I know what an MCP is, and I use an MCP, but now you're saying almost as if it's a standalone thing. So what are you wiring that to?
So you can, and in fact, Bruno, if you want it in here, you can do in the extensions, just type in Microsoft Doc or Microsoft Learn. And it should show.
Yes, I need to.
Oh, you have to say MCP servers. And then Microsoft.
It should be. Oh my God! I was hoping that I find it with. It's Learn or Docs here. I
forget what they call it.
Learn. There it is. Learn.
There it is. Microsoft Learn.
Okay.
So he's already got that installed. But if you do that, this basically tells whatever your coding environment is. It tells Copilot, hey, go read the docs. And it won't just look at like method signatures, but it'll look at like best practices and, like sample code and all that kind of stuff. So I find that does a much better job than instead of having to actually what keys that off in my mind is when Bruno said you need to go read the docs. Anytime that I give that I'm like, or tell Copilot to read the docs, because it can do that.
Great.
And then another thing you've mentioned, I think, was one of the dependencies you've got there, Jesse, is you've got some sort of something set up for web searching. Mm-hmm. And you may be able to replace that, because I noticed that Bruno was showing one of the tools that was available. Oh, I don't know. Maybe that was only for a prompt agent. But you may be able to.
When you have a hosted agent, you can, because you are working inside of Foundry, you can add a web search tool that is going to use Bing or whatever I can remember. So you can add one out of the box. And one of the samples that we have here.
Okay.
One of the samples that we have here, create code. Sorry, let's go for agent, hosted agent. So I went to the Foundry toolkit. I went to agent, hosted agent. I went to add a new hosted agent. And if I search for C#, somewhere here, file tools, memory rack, MCP, Foundry MCP, wow. I think we have, this is it. Hello world, this is the hello world, the echo with local tools, MCP document. Oh, one of these is the search agent, text search, using the web search.
That went by, actually.
Yeah.
Yes, I think I passed it. But one of these, I can't remember where, you have how you can add a tool that when it's deployed in Foundry is one of the Foundry tools to do web search. So you can use that and avoid the third-party web search. And
But
you're
then
going
what
to
happens
use
when you're running it locally, if you're testing and running locally?
I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know what it's using locally. It's one of these. I don't want to create 20 of these.
It has
but one of
search
these,
at the top above that list that says search any field.
So this is it. Browsing the web, tracking tools. So maybe this one. Next, let's do Jesse 02. As usual, not very smart. So create, and let's take a look at the generated code here. So this is the sample, how it works, ACD, isolations, and sorry, I like documentation. Okay, so we have here, let's see how it's implemented, but we have our program, and then we have web browsings and tools. So this is the happening of browsing. And what do we have here? Argument to array. Oh, it's doing I think it's, what is doing? Too many redirects. Where is doing the magic of the search? I don't know. I need to check this out, but I know that when you deploy this, because this is a tool, literally there, is going to use the local one from research quality, presenting, AI agent, endpoint, the harness.
As long as it's simple like this.
Yes. And this is also using something that is very cool that we have right now in Agent Framework. You probably seen this, Jesse. I don't know. It's this from the last month, I think, which is now the Agent Framework allows you to create a harness. Everybody's talking about the harness. So you can define in your harness the ABCs of a harness, which is memory, tools, telemetry, and more. And it's a package concept inside Agent Framework that is going to give you all of that. So it's easier to create one right now. And I see here that it gives you access to the file memory store, loop evaluators, because part of a harness is, okay, agent, do this 5 times, try 5 times. If you're failing, try 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or do the Ralph Wiggum mode, try forever. So you have everything on the harness also here. And then you have the web browsing tools to do the search. But hey, this is new for me. This is not the one that I've seen. I've seen another, or maybe I've seen another, and I am hallucinating in my local small LLM in my head, where I see that we have a search here. But hey, this seems to be a new one. This seems to be a completely new one. But at the bottom, we have the magic lines, which is add the Foundry responses, add the register protocol. And if you package this and deploy it to Foundry, this is going to be recognized as the hosted agents.
Great.
Cool.
Very cool. Okay. It sounds to me that getting started is pretty straightforward.
Yes.
And that the extensions help a lot. That when it comes time to move over a large or medium-sized application, that there are some aspects to it that are going to require a little bit more work, especially things like using a third-party tool through MCP, an MCP client. You'd have to figure out how that's going to get wired through a Docker container.
Yes, I mean, the MCP is just an HTTP call, so it should be fine. The challenge here is that if we are running this inside of Azure, inside of a container in Azure, maybe that container needs to be open to access those services, those ports, and more. If you need to pass some type of header with a key bearer, with a bearer key or something like that, or you are using OAuth or something else, we need to figure out also that part there. That said, it's the same concept as of a web application deploying to Azure, but all of those, we need to think about that even if you're deploying this manually to your own environment in Azure. We need to figure out that before deploying this as a solution to Azure.
Great. Well, my brain is spinning, but I got a lot of information here. I'll watch this a couple of times. And along the way, we got some nice extensions for Visual Studio
I'm
Code.
glad because I got to learn with you, Jesse, because my explanation at the beginning was very outdated, where I was thinking of Foundry just as a model provider. And it's like, and I've had this on my list to learn more about that hosted agents, and I've skimmed blog posts, but I didn't get it until today. So
No, but
I'm glad one of us did. That's good.
that's completely valid. I mean, it's all started like that with LLMs and a question and answer. And by the way, 90% of the time is just a simple agent answering question connected to a RAG database.
Right.
That's all you need. You don't need anything else. And you don't need the GPT 5, 6 Sol Ultra Universe model. A small model, I am a big fan of using small models for the right task. So sometimes you just need an agent connected to a database with a small model answering questions.
Yes.
That's it. We don't need to go for the big guns all the time. There are other times that you need big guns, you need big everything and more. But it's all started there. So it's still valid. That's a scenario that is still very, very valid today.
At the risk of giving Mads Christensen a heart attack, I'll tell you that I've been using Visual Studio since Visual Studio was created. And I've now switched almost all my time to Visual Studio Code because so many of the samples and examples and when people show things and so on are in VS Code. And it's lightweight and it's got a lot of great extensions. And so it's interesting. Visual Studio I use for big enterprise apps, but for this kind of thing I use VS Code, which is a revelation to me.
Honestly, I had a conversation with him at VS Live a little bit ago, and he was like, it was at a table topics thing, and he's saying, like, that's totally valid because Visual Studio is really aimed at those kind of enterprise development scenarios. And here, when you're writing something that's kind of more lightweight and, like, I don't know, you don't need all the power of now, they've added quite a bit in where if you want to have Copilot, like say do performance analysis or like really integrating with debugging and tools and testing and all that, it can do quite a bit. But if you're like lightweight code focus, this is a pretty, they're both valid.
Right. Excellent. Thank you so much. This was tremendously helpful.